Welcome to We and Lewis, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewis and are helping our community forge a collective soul as appealing as it is unique. These are their stories in their words. They are the we in Lewis. I'm your host, Kevin McGinnis. I'm so excited that our guest today is William Bill Collick, the legendary Cape Region icon, educator, and mentor. When we were discussing starting this podcast, Matt DiSabatino asked me to name 3 people who I'd like to have on the podcast. Bill was the first person I mentioned because few people better symbolize what makes Lewis so unique than Bill. He's been a record-winning coach, an educator, a dean of students, a trustee of countless organizations, and perhaps the most active volunteer I've ever met. He's in a variety of sports halls of fame, has been coach of the year in both college and high school, and a recipient of awards and acknowledgments from organizations ranging from the West Rehoboth Community Center to the Delaware State Legislature. Today's episode is brought to you by the sister restaurants Kindle and Half Full. Located in the heart of downtown Lewis, Kindle offers seasonal American fare with a bit of French influence, as well as an amazing selections of wine by the glass. Everyone leaves happy. Right next door, Half Full focuses on gourmet pizza and wine, and is also known for delicious soups, salads, and an amazing array of desserts. If you can, try the cold board appetizer. You may not even get to the pizza. And weather permitting, it also provides outside seating enhanced by perfectly selected pre-recorded atmospheric music that won't interfere with your conversation unless you want it to. We do live in such modern times. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Kevin, and thank you for having me.
There seems to be a common theme throughout your career, whether it's in the classroom, on the field, in boardrooms, or meeting individually with a young man or woman. It seems education is always paramount, preparing the next generation to be the best version of themselves. Is that true?
Well, I do. We're all, certainly products of where we've been and who we are, and I'm blessed to be raised in some part by my grandmother, who was able to get my uncle to Howard High School from Lewis, where there was not a place for blacks to go to school after 8th grade. And as a result, she emphasized education. And I saw what it had done for him generationally. And I thought it was something that I could be successful with. And I'm not going to go ahead and say I certainly was the smartest one in the room. It was just that if you got in and put some time on task and did the things you needed to do, that you could live this American dream. And I think the American dream, one of the best ideals known to man and womankind, as long as you get an opportunity to get in and play it.
For those of us who played sports growing up, after we become adults, we often try to find a job where we can replicate the joy of being part of a team. Almost every retired professional athlete I ever got to know, regardless of sport, when you ask them what they miss the most, it's not the attention, the roar of the crowd, perhaps the money. It's the clubhouse, the locker room, or traveling with teammates. Why is that?
Well, I think a big part of it is the esprit de corps kind of thing. I think I got a guy that I talked to just a while back who lives in Florida, and I called him right before the hurricanes and whatever, and we've been talking since we left Wesley College. But he said to me, it was such a great time for him at Wesley College, and of course him and I became good friends. And he said to me, he talked about looking at what made a difference for him, and he thought that all of us being together. And he said, my bucket list includes that you come to Florida and stay a week with us, you and your wife. And I thought, man, oh man. And so I just think it's things that you learn and grow with and grow up with. And it's a big part of the growing up process. So I think that's the real issue. It's something, and you could be a millionaire, but you can't buy that type of togetherness at the Walmart store. It's not for sale. You got to earn it.
What does it take to be a good coach?
Well, Joe Brzezicki and I are good friends, and we were at Delaware State together. And we always talk about that John Taylor made us a good coach. He was a good player. So we say he made us a good coach. But you know what? I think a big part of it is having some type of structure and order. It's minding the store. Uh, I coached a long time with Coach Brzezicki, and then with Herky Billings, whose father was at Middletown and won 100 games there and whatever. But you look at it, and we were out playing Grambling one time, and we had a guy, Darryl Stansel was the fullback on the punt team. He made all the calls, and so Andre Williams was our special teams coordinator, and heck, he wanted to fake it the first time we punted. And I said, Andre, we ought to back up a little bit. Just wait a little bit. We'll get our time. And sure enough, we got our time. And when we practice it, first thing, we better make it. If we're going to fake it, and get in front of the chains and get out of bounds, secure the ball. Don't give it back to him. Well, fake goes off well, nice cross block at the line of scrimmage. He does exactly what I say do. He could still be running right now. I thought he might score. He gets in front of the chains. So, man, I go down there to meet him and whatever. And on the way back, and Herky Billings is a guy that he lets you know right away. I won't call him a yeller and a screamer, but he'll get after you pretty good. So I go down, and on the way back, Herky says, let me talk to you. What he did is exactly what you say every day when we work on the punt. So he did exactly what you said do. So, it's amazing. But again, just you talk about being a good coach. I just think it's having some structure and order and putting some things into place and being able to do it, getting your kids to be able to do it.
Not everyone will know who Mr. Taylor is. Right. So could you, we're talking, go ahead.
John Taylor was one of our players who actually went to Johnson C. Smith in North Carolina long enough for his father to drop him off and head back to Pennsauken, New Jersey. And John decided that he didn't like it and called his father. So his father had to turn around and go back to North Carolina to get him. And he said, he's coming back to get you. I'm coming back to get you, but you cannot stay here. His father was a worker, a postal worker, and John had some friends at Delaware State. So he ended up coming to Delaware State, and I never forget it. It's Labor Day there, and he comes up, it's a tall, skinny guy, says he wants some football equipment. We did not recruit him. And so we say, come back the next day. Well, do you really want to do it or whatever? So he comes back, and Rob Schroeder who was from Lewis and who I played in Ship Carpenter Square, was helping us coach then and was the coach of the demonstration squad. And we found out right away we could not cover the guy. He's running out of people's plays and scoring touchdowns. So we decided that we needed to get this guy on the field, and we put him on the punt return team. And the first time he returned the punt, he returned it for a touchdown. And we said, we got to get this guy on the field. I know he's late, but we got to take some extra time. He's got to come before practice and stay after practice. And boy, let me tell you something. I mean, he became an All-Pro and became an All-American college and whatever. But, he was a guy that, again, we say made us good football coaches.
Was coaching football more than just about winning championships, which you often did?
Yeah, I spoke to you, I think, at one time about my uncle, and when I first got the job at Delaware State, he was elated. He had graduated from there in the 40s. But you know what he said to me? He said to me that you'll have to win in college, because if you don't last very long. And thank the good Lord, we lasted almost 20 years there. But he said that what you're really going to do and be able to do, just like someone did it for me, you're going to be able to give some kids an opportunity. And many of them, and they will be first generation kids going to college. And I spoke a while back with Reverend Edwards, and he talked about the fish factory, that so many people were coming from the South, not bringing their families with them, but sending the money back home because they got bonuses as well. Sending the money back home because a lot of kids were first generation college going to places like Florida A&M and South Carolina State and Jackson State. So he said, that was really happening. And I agree. I think what you'll do is you'll give some kids an opportunity, and generationally, that actually, provides the pillar kind of thing for the next kid being able to step on it and move forward. A while back, we used to have that slag road that ran right down the middle of Delaware State, and you could see when it came time to check in, it may be a parent. It was the village now. It may be a police officer. It may be a grandfather, grandmother, aunt, uncle. It may be anybody in that kid's life. And I always told our coaches that what was happening here was that people in their in their life were bringing them to school, and they would be seeking a better way of life. That's what they were doing. They were, and I always told our coaches, now, you can bring the kid in and we not do the best job we can, but in 4, 5, or it could be 6 years, someone is going to say, did my kid get what they really came for? And I tell you what, we're not going to be in a good light. And of course, back then the NCAA started, publishing graduation rates and all that kind of stuff. But people were bringing the kids that were giving you the best they have, and they expected you now to give them a better one back. That if you can fool yourself, you say my kid's going to come to score touchdowns now, because we've had some people in the NFL, and they used to say that National Football League was not for long. You can't do it forever. So what are you going to do when this thing is over? We used to call Route 13, don't get out there without that degree. You get on that thing, you'll get run over. So you're looking for that saleable commodity through that degree. And there's a big sign there that talks about going forward to serve. And so we had an obligation, and I look at guys like Dr. Michoud, who was the president then, and he had an expectation for us as well.
I saw a story about you where your team was traveling to a game, and you stopped the bus and made a player get off and go back to his dorm room to get a tie because he had forgotten to do it. Was teaching those sort of rules, that sort of an approach to life, also, does it lead to success on the field?
Well, I think it does. I think it's that structure and order, and they all know before they come to camp. And I have to be honest with you, he wouldn't mind if I said his name. Dan Candelora that's
who it was
the player of the year in our conference, defensive player of the year, and I think he thought, well, maybe I'm kind of a little bigger than this now. And we didn't fly charter, we always flew commercial, and so we had a standing rule that you had to be on the bus, it had to be in the airport too, 2 hours before. You don't want to get caught up in that deal, get in traffic or whatever. So it's probably 5 o'clock in the morning, really. And, our kids come, they got coaching ties on. He's the only one that doesn't have a tie. And so one of the captains say to him, I think you better get back, if you're going to travel with us now, better get back in that dorm and get that tie on, because he'll leave you. And we talk about it now, and we're good friends now, but we just thought that structure-wise, and then when you're supposed to do an assignment or whatever on the field, you realize that's what you're supposed to do. You're not bigger than the program. And I thought it really bode well for us that our kids bought into it. It was a good deal. And then Dan Candelora will probably tell you now there are days on his job that he has to wear a tie. So, we kind of get it started early.
Your first teaching job was at Rehoboth Elementary in 1975, and you started coaching immediately. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. I got a job. I'll be honest with you, I had 2 teachers, honestly. Coach Kowaleski from Rehoboth, and Mr. Hickman was our driver's ed teacher, and they went to the superintendent and said that myself and another person Janet Mall, had graduated from college, and you need to hire him. I don't know if the superintendent was okay with it or not, but you know what? We both got jobs. And again, I'm an ally kind of guy too. I think you got to have somebody kind of working with you, speaking for you at times to get you in the door. And if you're doing the right thing, I think you can take off from that. So we were very blessed to get jobs during that time and parlay them into some things. We both had great careers. Janet was a school leader, a principal there, and former school board members. So we really were blessed that we had some people to become allies for us.
Your first head coach job at Delaware State wasn't in football, is that right?
No,
it was in
first
wrestling.
Coaching job was wrestling. They had a wrestling program, and I had been the head coach at Cape Elopen for a bit. And Mr. Townsend, Nelson Townsend, who was a wonderful human being first, but a great boss, actually asked me to coach the wrestling team. And again, just people that I knew, kids in the area, Delaware. We got some other kids from the tri-state area, but we were able to get some things, put some things together and get a championship out of it. And they were from kids that were from Delaware. And so we really were able to get that done. And I felt great about that. And I don't know, you always are hoping that you can put some things together, and we were able to do that. And believe me, those guys came and they were ready to go. And it was a great time for us. It really was.
Did you wrestle in high school?
I did not. Let me tell you something. Coach Kowaleski asked me to be an assistant wrestling coach. He was putting people together. And so I got there, and Mr. Lynham, Thornton Lynham was the wrestling coach, and I got with him and went some clinics and whatever, and began to learn the ropes a little bit, and had great mentoring from him. And as a result, and again, I would say that good football players make good coaches and good wrestlers, and I fell on some good wrestlers, and Mr. Lyman left some good wrestlers there, and we were able to parlay that into a competitive team.
Well, and you actually won a championship, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. And so, again, just, getting with the right people. It's important. I also had Randy Johnson's was he wrestled for us, and then he became an assistant there. And so I had the blessings of having him. And so he was a good assistant coach, really, was a head coach, really, in that he had the great skills, and I learned a lot from him as well.
And then from there, you also became the head coach of football, which is what you're really known for.
Well, let me say this to you. We got it turned around there pretty fast. And because everybody knows Joe Pizicki, he's a winner, and I learned so much from him as well. And then he got a job at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And so we all had to pick up and go. My wife was expecting with our second child, and I don't think she really wanted to go. She said after a bit that, will we travel and actually take care of our kids and you talked about taking care of our mothers. We were from single parents and taking care of our mothers and whatever. And so Nelson Townsend, as I said to you earlier on, was a great boss and never wanted me to leave. And so he called her one day. They had a couple of people that they had talked to about taking a job and interviewed, but they just couldn't come to it. So time was the essence. And he just said, I'd like to call Bill. And he asked her if she thought that I'd take the job. And she said, you don't have to call him. He's going to take the job. And we laugh about she spoke for me, and I guess she still does. It's been a good deal, though.
You were the head coach for 11 years.
11 years. Mm-hmm.
And you amassed a winning record of 81 victories to 48 losses and included 5 first-place conference finishes.
Yes.
I believe you're the winningest coach in the school's history.
Well, I'm a wee guy, and we are. And it was great. And again, I told you when we started that kind of started with a guy like John Taylor, who goes from there to actually catching the winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Guys like Ed Williams. I can go on and on, and guys who actually actually left there and got an opportunity in the NFL. Rod Milstead, I mean, 2 Super Bowl rings. So we were fortunate. We fell on some good people. And I go back to John Taylor was just an unbelievable athlete. Rod Milstead, you talk about the two differences. Rod Milstead was a guy about 6'1", 245, was a defensive end. We had two guys, LaPresbury and LeBryant Robinson, who were all conference guys when Rod got there. And we said, well, you're probably going to be behind them, and it'll be another year. So we redshirted him and made him a guard. He was very aggressive, and we ran a lot of sweep and on the flanks and stuff, and he was a mismatch for people. When he left, he was about 6'3", grew, about 6'3", about 290, was a Walter Camp All-America, NCAA and Associated Press, and got drafted and got in the NFL, and I think played 6 years, 2 Super Bowl rings. But look at the difference in those two guys. John Taylor was just such a natural athlete. His brother Keith, I know, played for the Colts as well. So, I mean, the great family, whatever. Rod Milstead, great family. And I saw Rod Milstead. I was sold on him. I saw him play some basketball, too. He ran the floor well and whatever. And I said, we need to take this guy. And Don Golosinski was the guy who recruited that area. At Bryan's Road, Maryland, is you ride forever to get there. But he was worth the ride, let's say that.
And in those days, players who were really good but coming from not sort of the best-known state, best-known schools, mm-hmm. not the Alabamas or the mm-hmm. Texas or what have you, they got chances.
Yeah, you know what? We always used to say that, we'll find you. We had a young man by the name of Denarian McCants, and we had lost a receiver to Howard in the recruiting deal. And Dwayne Henry, who is from Smyrna, says, I got this guy and put this film on, man. He catches the ball all the time now. And, we tried to make him a tight end because he caught the ball so well, but he was really a wide out. And so we put him back out there, and of course he gets drafted, and just a mismatch for people. And, but we just, I don't know, I guess it's not an exact science, but if you go in and then some people will call you and say, look, I got this guy and I need you to take a look. I had a situation with Timmy Edgerton took John Taylor's spot when John left. And Timmy Edgerton was probably half of John Taylor's height, but boy, he was dynamic. He was a great punt returner as well. And we're up there in New Jersey, and the coach says to me, I got a quarterback. I really need to get him in the school. Coach, I'd wish you would take him. And I took him. His name is Darren Felton. And Darren actually didn't start right away, but kind of waited his time. And boy, we went down, and it ended up being for one of those conference championships to play Florida A&M, and we run what we call 90 option. And I think decided that if they took our fullback away, because it's a pitch to the fullback, and we had a kid, Mike Murray, who was really special. So they were tackling him whether he got the ball or not. But I don't think they put any time into, option assignments. You have to have people run option. Somebody's got to be assigned to 1, which is a dive, 2 at the quarterback, or 3 to pitch. I don't think they put a lot of time in the quarterback. And boy, let me tell you, he did a great job. It was homecoming down there. I think it was 1914. And boy, did he do a great job. And, it was amazing because there were a couple of times I was really upset that we would take it down and then get a penalty, get out of field goal range. But I wondered when we got back on that plane, how do we win this game? You put that film on, I think in that fourth quarter that fourth quarter, that time of a 15-minute quarter, I think we had the ball 9 minutes. So they couldn't get the ball back. We just would have it, and at times, like I said, we didn't score. But boy, let me tell you something. It was amazing, and they probably had athletes that were really could score, but but we kind of kept it away from him, and Darren did a great job just running the ball, and then he started getting out of bounds and getting 15-yard penalties. You get hit late and that kind of stuff. So, and then he was our quarterback for a couple of years. So, sometimes it's an exact science, and other times, like I just remember we got a lot of kids from that school, and so I thought, you know what, man, we're going to take this guy, and boy, did he pan out.
How many of your players went pro?
16 of them did.
I was confident you'd have that.
They really did. And again, it's just, you never know when they get there sometimes. I mean, I look at Milstead. He grew and I tell you what, his leadership skills were unbelievable because about his junior year, I think he thought he may get drafted. He had a great run and whatever. And so, he's a big old guy. And so he started running the stadium steps after practice every day, and then all the linemen started doing it. So, you get that leadership quality. You can tell him to do it. He said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get prepared. And of course, he ended up getting drafted and, winning some Super Bowl rings. But you find out about people and where they are. And if you went and sat in his house and sat and talked with his mother and his father, you realize what kind of guy he was. And so you're not surprised. I went 2 years ago, his father passed. I went to the funeral and just, his mother was there and just remembered coming to get him. He was 17 years old, and it's great. It's a great thing to do, and there's a camaraderie that doesn't, you see people that you haven't seen in a while and whatever, and it's great. It really is. And I tell you, I couldn't ask for any better. And I guess I need to go back and thank all my coaches because I think one of the things I always tell people is that you got to find somebody that's doing well and say you want to be like him. I wanted to be like some of my coaches. I really did.
Have you found that one of the greatest joys of being a coach is not necessarily records that you accumulate like you have, but these relationships you have with the people you coached?
This guy, Matt Horace, who played for us. And so he gets cut at the Giants camp, Philadelphia. So he goes home again, and his dad says, well, what are you going to do? You got a degree. What are you going to do? So he goes, I think Arlington, Virginia. He goes online or something and finds out that Arlington Police Department paid the most money, and I guess he was looking for money then. And so he goes down and becomes a policeman, and then leaves there, I think ATF, FBI, and recently retired, actually was director of security for all the Mayo clinics in the world, boy and a girl, both graduates from West Point. I've got it on my phone. I got a picture from him the other day, and he calls and he says, Coach, I'm tired and I'm broke. He says, I had 2 weddings in 2 years. That's what he says. But he's doing well, and now he's working for some security of some big firm in Atlanta. But boy, what are they doing? I think I told you, Dr. Marvin Bright now called the other day, and he was helping his son with his master thesis. That boy stayed, and I don't know. They're just a few. I just look at, and I'm alive, and I'm so blessed because I can say that I told you so. As those guys were left off, I just looked at them and thought, boy, what? Look at the possibilities for the next generation. Bright, smart, good football players, good citizens. And I get to say that now, and I really do. It's a blessing that look at those guys and how well they are doing now. And I really thought they would.
Not many successful college coaches leave and then take a job back in high school. Why did you move to Sussex Technical High?
I've known a guy by the name of Jerry Cabasa for a long time, and he had a superintendent that thought their football program could do better, and he also thought that they needed to hire a dean of students. And so my name came up, and I remember meeting with those guys. I think first in Milford, we just kind of wanted to explore some things, and we felt good about what we were going to do. And so the next time we met, honestly, in Dover, and just decided that June we were gonna do this, and it was a great move for me. It got me into high school administration, and it was great. So because you're still dealing with kids and families and people, it's still within the state system. So when you talk about just retiring and all that kind of stuff, you're still in that. It parlayed into something. I was going to work for a guy by the name of John Hollis when I was getting ready to leave Sussex Tech, and Dr. Robinson, who had been my seventh grade football coach, actually had retired from a superintendent at Caesar Rodney, came to live in Lewis, and the school board asked him to take over the district for a year until they could do the search for a permanent superintendent. And he put about 8 of us together and said, I want you all to come to the Lewis area and work in the Cape and Lopin School District. So that deal of, you say, leaving, look at what that did for me, leaving Delaware State, and we'd gotten some things done, got a lot done, but then it parlayed another opportunity for me.
At that time, Cape was having some issues.
Yes.
And so, and I know you coached there as well. So, but were you the dean of students? So you're the dean of students and the coach.
Yes.
And you were part of a major turnaround for that school. Is that right?
Yes. We went from being under review to, in 4.5 years, we got a Blue Ribbon Award as one of the 200 best functioning high schools in the United States of America. And I'm a wee guy, and there was a guy by the name of Brian Donahue who was the principal. And boy, did he have great vision for what we could be. Dr. Robinson, at the time when I came, said to me that we met, and he said, Brian is going to be the principal. You're going to be in charge of the culture and the climate of the school. And we worked at it. It took teachers. It took the whole group to get this done. But I thought that we weeded up and really got it done, and very proud of the outcome of it. We got to make sure that we get kids ready. People talk about sometimes that maybe some kids are still, the COVID deal and kind of maybe things from the COVID. But boy, at some point, we got to get kids ready, because it really is. We're going to cross paths with them, and we can get them ready and just kind of pay me now or pay me later. And I would much rather to get them ready. When we left there, I was, believe it or not, at a funeral, and I met a guy by the name of Bob Gilmore, and he wouldn't mind if I say this, and he's an ex-NASA engineer. And he asked me what I did, and I told him. I asked him what he did, and he told me, and he said, I'm retired here. I'd love to maybe come and help. And boy, he comes in, and we got kids, he's got a math problem, and we did it through, we have a group called Pathways to Success, and a lady by the name of Faye Blake's a nonprofit who helps kids who are under-resourced or maybe underserved a little bit. And it's Bob, he's gotten probably 5 other people too that he knows, and so everything from chemistry to math. If Bill Collick's got a math problem, and we have an advisory period, it's about 40 minutes a day, and so Bill Collick can go to see Bob Gilmore, and he'll help me. And we also do some stuff after school. So it is great. I think sometimes we don't realize how important it is to reach back and help people, and we've all had somebody to help us along the way. We have.
How do you change a culture in a school?
I think you got to show examples. I'm going to tell you, that's a great question you have. When we got in there, we took some guys on the football team, and they along with maybe literal girlfriends or just females that they knew, we had an assembly the first day of school, and we taught folks or showed folks how to dress. Here's a, you got a dress code and all that kind of stuff, but you can read it, but can you see it? And I always say, if you can see it now, you can do it. If you say, I want to be like it. And so that you say culture was, well, yeah, then we have kids coming to school focused on getting an education, and it's great to be a great dresser, but you got to do it appropriately. And so that was a simple thing, but it was an important thing. And our kids were proudful of it. And I'll be honest with you, we would have football players at times who may see someone getting ready to get into a fight and say, well, we don't do this at Cape and Lopin, and they would bring them to the office. And they were not bullies, but they were people who kids in the school and people in the school respected and knew, and they were great examples. And so that's kind of how we changed that.
And you see this at all levels of sports, where there are players on the team who take responsibility for the team. You're not necessarily as a coach, but you'll have, we used to call them clubhouse coaches. Mm-hmm. And they set the tone. If something's going on, they're often the first to react. Then you took that sort of concept and applied it to an entire school. So these kids, a handful of kids, started saying, this is how we do it. We don't do that in the school.
Yeah, I did. In fact, I remember I had a young lady that wasn't acting appropriately, and another young lady said to her that, they won't allow you to do that anymore. You can't do that. I tell you what, culturally, I thought we got a lot done with calling parents and letting them know, we don't think you have a bad kid, making some poor choices. Let's come in and sit and talk about it and see if we can't get you to help us get him or her where they need to get it. I ran into a lady the other day. I'm good friends with the guy who owns Pat's Pizza on Route 1. Mm-hmm. And she talked about her son now working for the Baltimore Sun, getting a degree in journalism, and her daughter graduating from Texas A&M, and talked about, she was there during that time, it was a while back, and just how glad she was. And she spoke of our ex-principal, Brian Donahue, as well, that we're just looking to give you the best. I think all of us want our kids to do well. We really do. And I think if you sit and talk with parents, I just always have believed that whatever it is, that you're never as far apart as you think you are if you'll sit and talk about it.
Bill, you grew up in Lewis, across the street from what is now Ship Carpenter Square. Lewis then was not what it is today. Tell us about your childhood.
Well, I grew up on Burton's Avenue. And it was a time where most African Americans lived on the west side, and West 4th Street, which is now called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Way, was kind of, some people may think the divider. I think it was something that actually brought people together. Most Caucasians lived on the east side, and most kids congregated, which is now called the Field Ship Carpenter Square. I think at that time Otis Smith owned it. There was an integrated, in the 50s, 60s, an integrated baseball team as well. I thought that the fish products, I think it was called, but it was really a pillar in Lewis, in that there were people working there. I think the mayor, Otis Smith, at the time knew that nets in salt water deteriorated really fast, and you had to get them out after fishing and get fresh water on them. It was labor intense, and when you think about that guy, just think for a second, he had blacks and whites working together in the 50s. And I hear from Reverend George Edwards that he had a dining hall that was built, and there was one stipulation that we all had to eat inside. You couldn't go outside and eat. And I look at that vision that guy had for what America could really be like. Paid a great wage, and as a result, it allowed people first time in this area for home ownership. So I just look at that kind of stuff, no gift. It was work, going to pay a livable wage, going to have bonuses, and it extended far and wide, because Reverend Edwards talked about that some people would come up and then go back home and send money back home so that first generation kids could go to college.
Bill, at that time you were growing up, Lewis was segregated. The school system was segregated. Yet you mentioned that the kids in Lewis you often played with together, got along with, were considered good friends, and then you would have to separate to go to school. Is that right?
Yeah, we did, and of course we were blessed to have Fred Thomas, and they just named a new junior high school right there on Savannah Road, Frederick D. Thomas Junior High. And Fred Thomas would get teachers that were excellent. And I don't think at that time, sometimes now when you're going to hire a new teacher, you probably have a big committee and that kind of deal. Well, Fred Thomas was hiring his own teachers. I know he was. And I remember Mrs. Jones, one from Boston. Mrs. Smith was from Rehoboth. There was a Mrs. Davis, first grade teacher from Slaughter Neck. But he was hiring his own teachers, and they were, you couldn't go to kindergarten, so they were catching us up. And then I really think we had the good fortune of when the schools consolidated, and unlike just up the road a little bit, I think there was a deal of integrating and then having to go back out and segregate because there was turmoil. But it was not the turmoil here. It really wasn't. We had folks, I thought, that were willing to do what was right, in no sense that when you talk about Supreme Court and separate but equal, we know that that's just not the case. And so we came upon good teachers doing integration as well. I tell you, coming upon Dr. David Robinson was a wonderful deal. I mean, Mr. Hanley, and I go to church with his daughter and son-in-law now, but Mr. Hanley I thought was an excellent teacher and somebody that you'd want to coach and teach your kids. I mean, just who he was. And so I still think that people make the difference, and it's your proximity and reference, I think, speak for you. And I look at mine and being in that field all day with the Schroeders, and we laugh about it, but we realize that peanut butter and jelly tasted the same at each other's house. It didn't take us long to figure that out. And so, I just think it's people that make the difference. Growing up, and I mean, in our home, it was that we had to go to school. I was really blessed. I wasn't sick. I never missed a day of school from first grade through 12th grade. And I never thought about it till afterwards. And, when a teacher talks about time on task, well, I didn't have any choice. I had a mother who probably taught Sunday school for 40 years at St. Paul's, and my wife's aunt, Mary Stanley, actually taught Sunday school with her. They were best friends, and so, we learned about things like Sunday school. The Daisies, whose ancestors, I guess, actually tore the house down on Chestnut Street and have rebuilt a brand new home. I remember Miss Shirley Daisy, the mother there, had a Girl Scout troop that my wife, they could not go into the Girl Scouts that were already here. So she went to the Chesapeake Girl Scouts and actually got a troop together, and my wife was a part of that. And I still think being involved in those type things are so very important. The skills you learn, the things that you learn. And I just thought there was structure and order. You had to go. Of course, I didn't have any choice. I had to go to Sunday school. My mother taught there. So, and then I look at my grandmother getting that lady to take my uncle to go to school at Howard. And so, we were really blessed. We really we fell on some good people, I really did. Period. We really did, and I still think that people make the difference, and some people still don't get it or see it or understand it. But many faults, but that was never one of ours or mine.
You've mentioned before your grandmother. Did she instill in you the respect or importance of education?
Yeah, and I still to this day, I mean, I wonder how. I mean, now I guess I don't know how much formal education she had, but I just look at her saying to my uncle that I have to get you out of here. And I'm sure she born him, so she saw the potential in him and get him to a lady in Wilmington. And I think I know his deal kind of gave us all, cousins and whatever, about not having an excuse about getting an education. And when I look at her, I still believe it. Her education was also that. I mean, you want to be a good carpenter. What do you want to do to have a saleable commodity that you can live and live well and take care of yourself and whatever? What do you want to do? But you have to be wanting to do something. It's really important. And I just look at what she did there. I thought it was unbelievable. I thought during that time, getting an individual to take him.
When did you meet your wife, Nancy?
Well, I mean, I'm 72 and she's 70. So I guess, we probably met in Sunday school a long time. And you know what?
But
she grew up in Chestnut Street.
Right.
Walking to school, they walked to DuPont. We all did. But you know, in our 20s, really, we always tell our kids all the time that we love you because we born you, but we gotta like you and like what you're about and what you're doing. And I think in our early 20s, I think we begin to like each other. I think that's, we had other boyfriends and girlfriends, I think. But in our early 20s, we begin to like each other and thought, well, you know what? As well as dating each other, it might be good if we would maybe spend more time together. And I think that's a simple thing for us with that. I thought I had a guy one time tell me, but I was already married. He said, well, I hope you married somebody that could bring out the best in you. My wife brought out the best in me, and I'm hoping that I did the same for her.
But she was also very willing to sort of help guide you along, as the story you told.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I still remember one time I had a friend who was the athletics director at Morgan State, and she said to me, "And do you think it would be good if we raised our kids in Baltimore?" Now in Baltimore, I'm sure it's a fine place, but. And so we kind of shut that down. After I had been at Delaware State for a while, we kind of shut that down. And her deal was that she said that one of us has to keep a steady job because football can be fleeting. And she thought BB was a wonderful place. And, of course, that's why we built here. And I drove to Dover as opposed to going to Dover and building. She thought this was a great place. We had grown up here. So she thought this was a great place to be, and it is, and it was, and for me, for us, it still is.
And what does she do at BB?
She's a respiratory therapist in the ER, and she's about 40 years, and wow. Yeah, and still likes to do it. I said a while back, and of course, she says to me that, well, you've got a meeting every day or something, so I'm not going to do when I'm retired. I'm going to just retire. That's what she said to me.
Who realized you were in love first? You or Nancy?
You know what? I think probably both of us did. I really did. I think, and I said to you, I think we really both thought that it would be good to spend more time together. I just do. We got along well, and I think it's part of knowing someone too. I grew up with them. They had brothers. She had brothers. So I'd go to Chestnut Street. The Gooches were very kind people as well. And of course, I had a little in there that my mother was best friends with her aunt. So I was welcomed. And so, yeah, I did it. And I, like I said, and I really mean it. I thought we got to the point where we said, boy, we like being around each other. You say, I tell the kids, we love you because whatever, but let's talk about, do I like what you're doing and what you're about? And I think that was as much as anything. I remember her. She invited me to her capping when she graduated as a nurse there. And she said to me, when you're the only male that I invited, that's what she said.
As a father, how wonderful was it to coach with your son, Billy?
It was great. I did have, my wife said one time, so now who's going to referee you too? She did say that to me, but it was good. I still remember and laugh about it, but we were playing Caesar Rodney and we hadn't beat them yet when I took that program. And he transferred to Sussex Tech when I got there. And I said, I'm just telling you, Bill, this is a career move for me. You know, Cape and Lopen, West End. He says, well, I want to do it. And I remember Greg McLaurin and Don Golosicki. Don was the offensive line coach. And you have to be careful. So I didn't want anybody saying that I'm going to bring him in there and he's going to start. So he alternated with a person. And then Don came up one day and said, I think your son's really ahead of him and it's probably not fair that you're alternating. So we did that. I do remember one time we're playing Caesar Rodney. We had not beat them yet. And I ended up losing like 15-6 to him. But he hadn't had a penalty all year long, and we were driving the ball, and it ends up somebody hitting somebody in the back, 50-yard penalty, took us out. So I took him out of the game. And needless to say, he rode home with his mother. Didn't ride home with me. And they were waiting for me when I got there. We talked about it a little bit. He laughed about it now. And I said, but I didn't understand. Not all year long. And then you go and do that at a crucial time. So we laughed about it now. But I had a great time coaching him. And then I had a great time working with him. And it's great to see people mature. I think he's maturing. Right? I know. And, I spent a lot of time in picking up at times his two young girls. One's in the second grade, one's in the sixth grade. So I enjoy spending time with them. In fact, we all went. The sixth grader had a play last night at Bethel, and so it's good. They live in Milford, right by the bypass there, and he actually is at Milford High School now. So it's good. I enjoyed it.
The Christian author Corrie ten Boom observed that the measure of a life, after all, is not its duration, but its donation. Echoing that sentiment, Jackie Robinson once said, "A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives." My friend, do you ever allow yourself to appreciate that you have led a life of importance?
You know what I do is, I thank you, first of all, for being kind and saying that, but you know what I really do is, I really think about just being able to say, I told you so. We do live in a time, and we've done it for a long time, that people are just, I don't know, they are labeled and whatever. And I just look at so many of our kids who have done well, and then the next generation is doing well. And so, you can say it, but when you can see it and do it, and then see it again, it's a blessing. My wife says that living every day also is a gift. But if you can talk about the life you live and that it's gone well, and it's gone well as a result of a lot of people, because I think people help us get where we get. I still think it's important to give it back. I really do, and to do something good. Faye Blake is a good friend of mine. I told you earlier on in this, who runs Pathways to Success, and it was her ideal to go to Mount Air and get about 50 boxes for Thanksgiving, and whether it's Cape and Lopen, whether it's Sussex Tech, whether it's Milford, because we're in all those schools, but to give back. And I've used my truck. Her husband did it for a while, and then now I kind of do the pickup. And then, not this year, but 2 years before that, I had something going on. My son did the pickup. So, and then again, I developed a relationship with a guy at Pat's Pizza, Alex, who will allow us to use his walk-in to store until they're picked up. So I still think the community and just the village, it's all about that. It really is. And I'm just elated that we're getting an opportunity to do it, really.
Bill, thank you.
Well, thank you, and we got to thank a lot of people. I've said to you a million times, I'm a wee guy, and I still think it's people that make the difference. I just do. I think, boy, if you can get, my uncle said it a long time ago, around good people, you can really get something done. The sky's the limit, and I still think that's where we are.
Well, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
The impact you've had, it's just outstanding. If you, dear listener, are having one of those days that leave you wondering whether anything still matters, please remember the story of Bill Collick, a man who didn't just cause a ripple, but a tsunami of good in our community. And thanks to today's sponsor, Kindle and Half Full. Keep an eye out for their weekly specials, including Tuesday, Moule Frite Night, and Thursday, Filet Night. They never disappoint. And thanks to you for listening and your continual support. We really do appreciate the comments and suggestions. Even though it's cold outside and the holidays are a distant memory, it's the perfect time with your favorite beverage in hand and enjoy an episode, or all of them, of this podcast. You won't be sorry. Till next time, this has been We and Lewis, the podcast.
Thank you.